So I'm going to be using the old world builder, the one that came with a DVD copy of my game, because the new Steam version seems to just have a lot of bugs. So double click on your world builder, file, new. Now what you want to do is make a folder. So these are a whole bunch of different maps that I've been working with. I've just got one down here called test. And inside that folder you hit open. Don't worry about giving it a name just yet. Sometimes this causes the game to crash, so just leave it blank and hit open. And this is where you can choose the size of your map. Generally you want to have 100 cells between the playable area and the terrain size, just so there's a bit of runoff from the edge of your map so it doesn't just end in a void. So I'm just going to go with this size. Generally if you want a really big map you probably want to get down to probably like somewhere past 700, but for this tutorial I'm just going to go with this smaller size. Hit OK. You can watch this stuff load through. So this can take a very long time to start, so don't get dismayed. If this stuff is loading here, it hasn't crashed and hasn't frozen up. The last thing you'll see is this in-pass data was already valid but regenerating. That means you're pretty much ready to go. Alright, so here's World Builder. You can obviously zoom in and out with your scroll. The first thing I would do is turn off fog just so you can see everything. So here is our playable area. If we go to overlay and then show playable area, you can see that the red section is where we'll play, and then the outside of the map is designated by outside the red area. Alright, so if you want your map just to function, the first things you need to do is stick in a HQ and a map entry point. So object placement, you'll get used to this structure here on the right hand side, but eBPS, gameplay, scroll down until you find starting position. Any of these will work, they're just different types of starting HQs. I'm just going to go with starting position 1. I'm going to stick it over here, and I'll put another one in this corner over here. And we also need a map entry point for your off-map stuff. So map entry point, here we go. Click one there, click one there. Alright, now you want to rotate this stuff, so you click on your object and then you hold shift and then drag, and that'll let you rotate it. So I'm just going to go like that, stick it over here. I'm going to rotate this one too, shift and drag. And I'm going to do the same with these ones down here. What you need to do is assign them to the team that you want. So by default you can assign a team, but generally you want to keep that on world. But once you highlight these two objects by drawing a box around them, just go to current and then go to world player 1 and highlight the bottom two, choose player 2. Alright, and you also need to go to territory and hit calculate Veroni. This is a territory thing. If we go to overlay and have a look at that, you can see that half the map belongs to this team, half it belongs to that team. It'll just stop you getting a saving error later. We'll come back and fix the territories another time, so you can turn that off. Now your map should be able to save at this point. So if you hit save, say yes, and no errors. At this point, it's probably, if you want to rename your scenario, you have to close World Builder, go to go to World War II, Data, Scenarios, MP, go to your folder, and you could individually rename each of these files, ensuring that you don't wreck the extensions that you can see at the end. Anyway, that's for another time. Let's have a look at some of the basic tools. I'm not going to go into huge detail. So that was object placement to ambient. This is all like your structures and things, nature being trees and that. So if we go to buildings, and we just pick one of these ones, you just place it in the middle of the map with right click. If you zoom in, if you hold Alt and then move your mouse, you can rotate around in 3D space. So click on my object, hold shift to rotate it as I drag it. Here's my little train station. So there's hundreds and thousands of objects, but this is an example of a building. If you wanted to add damage to the building, you just go up here to edit state, add building damage, press OK, double click on building damage, and you'll notice it comes up with this sphere option. If you click on that, it pops up with a X, Y, Z circle, and you can see as you move around, the building gets destroyed at various places. If you want to destroy the roof, grab that yellow line, drag it up, and you see the sphere moves up with it. So that's your building damage. You can add multiple building damage effects. Anyway, so you can add damage to pretty much every object in the game. Alright, so there are your objects. If we go to height map editor, this one can be a little bit finicky. So you pretty much got the difference between these two, fine and coarse. Coarse will make things in like blocks, and I find the most accurate way to work with this is to go to set value, and then if I just want to draw, so feather being like if the edges are feathered or soft, so there might be like a bit of a gradient moving up to the highest point. So if I just make my brush size a bit bigger here. Alright, so coarse one being quite square, if you click it and watch it, it comes up in like a box, and you can very easily turn this into a square. So if I was to go to overlay and then regenerate impasse, this gives us a bit of a grid line, and if I was to drop my feather down and my brush size, I could turn this into a pretty much a perfect square as I just move my way down. Just keep clicking it around, and if I go and regenerate my impasse again, I've made myself a big square. So very easy to make, I guess, vector shapes, big solid blocks using coarse, but obviously it doesn't quite look as good or as realistic, I guess, as your fine option here. Okay, now I recommend not constantly swapping between the two of these, otherwise your graphics will start messing. So I'll show you what fine looks like. I'll shove a bit of feather on there as well. And you can see already the graphics are just like screwing up over here because you're changing between fine and coarse. So I recommend not doing that a lot. Ways you can get around this are clicking and then pressing undo, and that can sometimes solve the graphics issues. But generally just stick with fine because it's better. So here we go. If I want to smooth down an edge, obviously right mouse button will do smoothing. That's been assigned to that. So I'll just right click and it starts smoothing. So if I want to make like a little ramp or something that looks natural. So overlay regenerate again, and you can see that it's passable just through the middle there. So generally you'd want to make that a little bit more smooth so that there's a bigger passable area through the middle. So I'm just going to keep smoothing it out like that. So if we regenerate that again, there we go, it's nice and smooth everywhere, so easily accessible by any unit. Turn off your overlay, but maybe you want to have precise height. Go to this spline placement tool. This one we'll look at a little bit later, but go to deform. And this will allow us to make like dead straight gradients and perfect lines and stuff. So if I increase my size, I'm just going to go to 10, press enter, and hit deform. And you want to do this perfectly aligned. So go to overlay, go to grid, zoom out just a touch, and you'll get this grid lines happening. I'm going to try and draw straight along a grid line. So I'm going to right click once and keep doing this until I get a minimum of 4 yellow dots. Like so, I've made them as straight as possible. Then press enter, and you can see here you've created a spline. And from here you can edit this thing. So turn off your overlay again because it gets annoying. There's your spline. And if I was to zoom in a little bit here, now holding H, this allows you to modify heights of objects. So this would work with my house. This is my building here as well. But holding H and then clicking and dragging upwards, you'll notice my spline is raising up. This is the finicky bit. You go press spacebar, allows you to edit individual sections. Changing back, toggling spacebar off allows you to edit the whole thing as a whole entity. So hitting spacebar, you want to edit this, drag it upwards a tiny bit too far then, until you see it perfectly straight like that. There we go. So now we've got a perfect block, and this is useful for making ramps and things. So if I was to hit spacebar again, and then clicking on the different points, I can change their individual heights. So if I click on this end one down here, and then hold H and drag down, I've made a bit of a ramp. So you want to go all the way down to ground level, and I've made a ramp there. You click to the next point, drop down again a little bit until the lines are sort of straight, and now we've got ourselves a bit of a ramp. Again, that'll be very useful for making smooth ramps all over your map. Once you're happy with your spline, you can choose to bake it, which will turn it into just a standard height map kind of like this, except it'll keep its original properties all perfectly straight like that. Don't do this until you're absolutely sure you don't want to change it, but I'll bake it now anyway. So now I can't edit it anymore. Let's have a look at tiles. So obviously this would probably be like concrete or something. So tile allows you to color in different parts of your map. Go to cement, I'm going to choose bunker roof. And then this one here allows you to create a new coloring layer. So hit that, and it chooses the one that we were just on. And so I'm going to just draw like so. And you can see that it's colored in this section for me. So it looks like concrete. If I decide I actually don't like that color, I just keep myself selected on this layer here, scroll down to a different one, and then hit assign, and it'll change what I've colored in already. Okay, and this works for all your different tiles. If you want to make a new layer, just hit new layer, and then assign whatever you want. So maybe I don't want this base green here. Maybe I'll change the grass to a darker one, assign, and it changes everything that's already there. Anyway, splining objects. So go to object, alright, and this is where you need to pick the object you want. So scroll all the way down here to this objects list, and we're going to choose one of the classic wall. So scroll down to walls, and then support, and we're just going to pick this support number 1. It's like in every single custom map you've ever seen. Alright, and if you want wall mode, this will mean that it'll like stay all connected together. And then this one here, adjusted to terrain, this will mean it'll move depending on where the heights go. When we're making like retaining walls and that kind of thing, you don't want to do that because you want it to like go through objects to make it look clean. So uncheck that, and then we're going to go over here and we're going to put a retaining wall around this ramp that we made. So once it's selected, make sure you haven't got adjustable terrain ticked. Go back to the top, make sure you tick that box, and then just make your 4 dots like before. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure you do your best to keep them straight. And I would do the same on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that we've got those 2 things, you can see it when you just hover your mouse over them. Draw a box to get them both at the same time. And then holding H on your keyboard, drag upwards. And you can see we've got these 2 walls. And now this is where we try and make it so that the heights are perfect. So just there looks about right. Use Alt to do a bit of a zoom, and if you would like the walls to face the other way, so you can see that sort of groove there, if you would prefer it to be the other way, you should probably just select 1 and rotate that around. There you go. So the reason why we have chosen not to be adjustable to terrain is because sometimes you want it to like cut in to this ramp itself. So if you hadn't checked that, it would be going all over the place right now. So we rotate that a little bit, I don't know, line it up like that, sure. And then you've got a bit of a wall for your ramp. Makes it look a little bit better. You can adjust the heights of your splines as well, just like we did previously. Hit spacebar to get each individual section, and then just H and click down on these little circles, and you can turn it into a bit of a gradient. So if you want to make a ramp like that, it doesn't look amazing actually, but you know, just so you know how to do it. There you go. You can individually edit each of these states as well. So like we did with our building damage before, if we scroll down here a little bit, you can see edit state, and you see the numbers 0, 1, 2, and 3. Just go to, I don't know, we'll go with number 1. Press enter to make sure you've chosen number 1, or click somewhere else so that 1 is definitely selected. Hit edit state, add, and then we're going to wall destroy it. So yep, you can see it applies it already. Okay, and there's our destroyed wall as part of our spline, so useful for when you make fences. I'll show you how to make something that's adjustable to terrain now. So hit adjustable to terrain, delete this one, scroll down, we're going to find like a fence, so like a field fence. There we go. And same deal, we'll like build a fence around this structure, click a few times. So there's our fence, and you'll notice it's kept itself in line with the ground, and I can't move it up and down with H at all. But good thing about this is if I decide to change the height of my map later, just by a little bit, maybe I'll just go 11. Default height's 10 by the way. So if I go like that, make my smoothing, you see that the fence is moving up with it as well. Okay. You'll notice that some of them don't have posts at the end. That's where you need to go into your objects and find the fence post by itself and stick it on the end, which can be a little bit annoying sometimes. And to line it all up, you generally have to go really close in like so, and then rotate that camera to make sure it's all connected. And there you go. You might want to add some grass on there, hit the grass editor, and just hit grass meadow, and you can just click it in just like the painting tool from before. If you want to get rid of it, just hit no grass. That's pretty much it. Alright, adding water. In this game you can't make things like waterfalls or anything like that, but you can make like puddles and craters and that kind of thing. Generally if you make a hole in the ground, you can then fill it with water. So like if I go lower than 10, because 10 is my medium base height, so I'm going to go 5. Just make a hole in the ground like this. Make it really big, just for fun. Alright, there's my hole. Alright, so if you just click on the water tool and then just right click in the middle of that hole, you can see the water there. And you can change its height very simply with current. You can see the water level there, or you can just press H and drag up. You can see it fills it up or shrinks it down. So if you want to change what the water looks like, because it looks pretty trash at the moment, go to Scenario Terrain Properties, and then you can see water reflection here and water color. So I'm just going to change it to, I don't know, this one. Hit apply, and it changes the look of it. You can change the color as well to various things. Cool. Alright, we're going to quickly add in some points and edit the territories, and then we'll be done. So go to gameplay, and then scroll down until you find the different kinds of points. Your point, just stick one there. Generally you want to try and balance your map, so I'll try and make it so that each team has access to each of the points equally. And now we need to take a look at where these territories intersect. So if I was to go to territory, TER, hit calculate Veroni, this will automatically allocate everything to its, I guess, equal portions. Toggle the overlay, and you can see based on the colors the areas that each sector sort of is part of. So if you want to edit this, just drop the brush size, use Control and then click to choose an area, and then you can modify it manually with the paint brush here. So I might just make it bigger over there like that. Click on this one, you can color in like this. So depending on how you want to do it, you can just change them slightly. But fair warning, if you hit calculate Veroni again, it automatically changes it back. So you really don't want to be editing your sectors until you've added all of these points in. Alright, toggle off your overlay. Alright, let's take a quick look at splats. Splats are pretty much textures, but they're like pre-made, so things like craters or blood or things like that. So I'm going to go here, crater for stone, and there's this big crater. It looks like that, which doesn't look very good when it's flat, and also sometimes the default scale is a bit high, so if you were to choose a different one or drop the size of that, for example to 10, it's like any resolution thing. If you make it a bit smaller, it looks a bit clearer. But generally you want to make your craters look good by dropping the height a little bit. So if you would go to subtractive, and then make yourself a little hole. That's a pretty big hole actually, but you know, who cares, let's try it. And then just choose your crater. It looks a little bit more crater-esque now, although probably just a little bit too sharp. Let's go with the dirt one, hey? Let's delete that one. That looks more like it belongs. So that looks more like a hole in the ground. and you could probably even take cover near it as well. Alright, you can rotate it by holding shift and spinning it around like so. You can even change things like opacity, on current that is. If you want to layer lots of different kinds. You can even change the color, but I don't recommend doing that. Alright, you probably want to know how to put in units and that kind of thing. So if you scroll down here, you got races and SBPS. So races, this is useful if you want to place buildings, but generally if you want to put any units in like vehicles or soldiers, you want to choose SBPS. And let's just go with some vehicles here. You want to put in the ones that say squad. These ones will appear properly in game. If you don't use the ones that say squad next to them, they'll have like these big purple blocks in their settings, which won't look quite right. So I'm just going to choose this hotkey and click it in. Alright, so just make sure you choose the ones that say squad. If you want to drop weapons, go to gameplay and props, and make sure you choose the ones that say item. If they don't say item next to them, they won't be pick-upable, so to speak, if that's a word. So right click it. Alright, that's pretty much it for basics. The rest of it you can just play around with and find things. I'm going to show you how to make your minimaps and how to export this as an SGA next.